Hi, everybody.
Hey, Marie.
Hi, I'm filling in for Lewis because he has a settlement, and guess what?
What?
His walkthrough did not go good, so he is running late.
Oh no. What happened?
Well, we'll get to that.
Mhm.
So,
Huh.
give everybody a minute or two. Hey, Drew Shields. So, yeah, so you're with me until Lewis gets out of settlement. So, settlement. So, um, getting ready for settlement. When you are getting ready for settlement, right? So you really, you earn your money really between, God, look at my hair, between when the ink on the transaction dries and getting it to the settlement table, right? So does everybody know what, and maybe Lewis went over this, did he go over what conveyancing is and what they do at the title company?
No.
Okay. So here's what happens, right? So once the contract is completed, right? We at Keller Williams, we have a contract with, or we have an association with First Land Transfer. First Land Transfer is down at the end of the hallway. And if you're in the Westchester office, you have that association with Chesco Land Transfer. So you have these associations. And for us, as part of that, right, there's two things that happen there. Number one is conveyancing, and number two is the settlement. So when you have the buyer, right, you have a buyer, your buyer has to order title, right? And on the title report, everything that is going to show up is any type of clouds on a title. So has anybody ever had experience where there's a cloud on a title? So they're out there. Typically there'll be things that can show up is a judgment against you, right? So let's say, you didn't pay something, your client didn't pay something, that can show up on you. Let's say an IRS lien, that can show up on there. So any type of filed lien against you can show up on a title report. Let's say you own your house by yourself and you're married and your spouse has a judgment, because in the state of Pennsylvania you co-own it, that will show up. So your title, right, is a report that is ordered that says that you've paid all of your taxes, you have paid all of any lienable item. So I live in West Bradford. In West Bradford, I pay my water to um, the water company, Aqua, thank you, to Aqua. That's a private company. However, I pay my sewer and trash and to West Bradford. So those items are lienable. So if I didn't pay my water bill, um, the water company would come after me civilly. If I don't pay my water, sewer, or trash in West Bradford, there will be a lien on my property from the township. Places are all different, right? There's certain townships that do not have lienable items. They may pay their sewer or their trash to a private company. You may have septic, so you don't have it. So all townships are different. That is not for you to worry about. That's why we have a conveyancer and a title company. So anyway, what the title company does is they get in a title report and they make sure that all of that your property can be transferred free and clear, so that when it was transferred before, that there is no that both parties signed off on it, right? So if Dan, you bought a house from Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that both of them signed off on it. If Mr. and Mrs. Smith bought it from Mr. and Mrs. Jones, that both of them signed off on it. So number one, it's to make sure that somebody doesn't have claim to your property. It's also to let you know if somebody else does have claim on your property. So for instance, is there any easements on your property, right? Do you have a cable in your front yard? Do you have wires running in it? I had a neighbor one time who has cable running through their yard, and the cable affects, 6 different homes. Well, that person no longer had cable. They ended up getting FiOS. And so when the cable company came out, she said, no, you can't access my property because, I don't really care about the cable anymore. And they said, okay, great, let's call the police because you're now in violation, right? So there's certain easements that are on your property that that you're made aware of. So that's everything the title does, right? They make sure that everything that you have legal right onto your property.
Anne Marie, I have a question.
Sure.
This is Joyce. Hi. Under settlement and possession, there was an opportunity, I guess, in some instances, instead of a special warranty deed, that you can have a general warranty deed. How do you, is that something that, what's that all about?
So there's different types of deeds out there. So in the state of Pennsylvania, what our title company does is they say, look, we are only guaranteeing title on your house from the time that you bought it to the time that you sold it. They don't go back in time from, the year your house was born. What they're saying is, oh, you received title from XYZ title company, and they guaranteed it from this point to this point, so we trust them. So in the state of Pennsylvania, they're just guaranteeing title from the time that you bought it to the time that you sold it. Now, if let's say a claim comes up 3 title companies ago, you would go after that company.
Okay.
So, there's different things that could possibly show up. Now, there are other titles out there that you need to be a little bit wary of. A quitclaim deed. Who knows what a quitclaim deed is? Yeah. I might own this property. I think I own this property. I don't really care if I own this property. Give me $100 and I'll sign it over. I would be really wary of my clients just getting a general warranty. I would, or buying with a quitclaim deed, because somebody could come back. Sometimes a sheriff's deed isn't also as comprehensive as I would like it to be. And if that was the case, I would try to figure out with the title company how we can get a better deed. So, so there are different types of deeds out there. Typically, what you'll see here in the state of Pennsylvania is just guaranteeing title from one point, from when you purchased it to you sold it. But what the title company does is they are the settlement officers. So they are going to be corresponding with not only you, but they're going to correspond with the other side of the other parties to the transaction, and they're going to they're going to be with the bank. Now, so that's if you're a buyer, right? If you're a seller, there's conveyancing, and conveyancing is dealing with all of the things to get to the settlement table. So it's getting the appropriate payoff from the bank. So if you and I call our bank and say, oh, we want to pay off our loan, they're going to say, oh, go to our website and you can put it in there and you can get an idea of what your payoff is going to be. It does not take into consideration all the other little nuances. So we don't, we need to order what they call an official payoff, and in that it will have additional fees such as wiring fees, transfer fees, anything that the People's Bank is going to charge, plus for every day that you don't close, the amount of interest. So let's say, they'll say, well, your payoff is, on this date, right, is $100,000. If for every day you don't close, please add, X number of dollars of interest. So they will handle that. And that's the conveyancer. The conveyancer also will deal with all of the conveyancer's job is the hardest job, I'm telling you. They have to deal with all of the water companies, all of the sewer companies, all of the trash companies. They also have to deal with all of the HOAs. When you sell a house with an HOA, the conveyancer here will contact the HOA representative. Now, most HOAs now are run by a company, but there are some that are run by, mom and pop in the neighborhood. I used to have that in my neighborhood, and it was hard. I mean, the guy worked full time, and what they do is when you sell a home in an HOA, you are required by law to provide the most up-to-date rules and regulations, the financial statement, right? Because you don't want to buy into a financial statement that is in debt, right? Because then a special assessment's coming. Or you don't want to buy into, and they have to disclose any lawsuits. So you may not want to buy into an HOA where there's any lawsuits. So what happens is the conveyancer takes it upon them. They have to go and they have to find out who the HOA is, and then they have to get all of that documentation. Then they send that back to you. So that's on the also at settlement. They will check to make sure, again, that all the taxable, lienable items are taken care of. They also will be corresponding back and forth with there's 2 government regulations. The first one is you cannot buy or sell property to somebody who is listed as a terrorist on the terrorist watch list. I don't know if anybody remembers, this came about after the terrorist attack in 2001, where this poor realtor down in Florida rented property to one of the hijackers, and they only rented the property for 3 months. And people were like, "Oh my God, why didn't that raise a flag?" No, that happens all the time. And so now they've come out with a list of people that were that are on the terrorist watch list. So number one, our conveyancer has the task of checking to see if your clients are on the terrorist watch list. The second thing that they do is they check to see if there's any outstanding child support that is due. In the state of Pennsylvania, you cannot transfer property if you owe outstanding child support. So they are going to check those 2 items. And they will then get everything together for settlement. So when you go to settlement, if you are the buyer, right, you show up at the settlement table. If you're the seller, the title, the conveyancer is going to get a nice package together, right? They're going to give you the deposit check. They're going to give you all the information for the other company with all of the lienable items showing that they've been paid off, and anything that the other settlement company is going to need. So really, the title company and the conveyancer are like little mice behind the scenes, making sure everything is done on the transaction. We again have First Land Transfer here. Westchester has Chesco Land Services. They're all owned by TA Title. And I have to tell you, they do an unbelievable job. Now, they will also be working with the mortgage company so that you can get provided with the CD, which is the closing disclosure, and on there, and the ALTA. And basically what it's going to do, it's going to show you all the charges, right? So it should match up very, very, very closely with your buyer's closing costs or your seller's closing costs. So it's going to show on there the amount of the house, the amount of the deposit. It's going to do all the prorations from the school taxes to the city taxes to the state taxes. It is going to show commissions. It is going to show your additional commission. So when you sell a house, let's say you're the buyer, and the house is, you're getting a $10,000 commission. Well, if the house is, let's say, I'll do it on here. If it's a $300,000 house, right, and the commission is 6%, what is the total commission? 15, right? Up 9,000, sorry. No, 18,000. Your portion would be 9,000 if you are charging additional commission, right? Additional commission is what we talk about on the buyer sheet and the seller sheet. And some people charge $125, some people charge $295, some people charge $395, some people charge $695. Whatever you choose to charge, you need to make sure that it is on the ALTA, and it will say additional commission $695. If it's not on there, that means you're not getting it. Or you need to call them and say, oh, you didn't put my additional commission on. It will also have on there the wiring fees. It will have recording fees. It will have notary fees. So at the closing table beforehand, and it's going to say how much money your buyers need to come to the settlement table with, how much money your sellers are going to walk away with. So as soon as you get that, right, you want to start going over it, right? Send it to your seller, send it to your buyer. You know, is this what you're expecting? Do you have any questions? And yeah, there's mistakes that happen. And so that's the reason you have to go over it with a fine tooth comb.
Anne Marie, can I interrupt for a minute?
Of course.
2 questions. Is it normal? Like, what are some reasons why you would charge an additional fee?
So some people, it's a cost of doing business, right? So perhaps they say, well, we're going to, you know, I come out and do staging services and I'm going to charge an additional commission there. Or they may say, I will be meeting all of, your job is to sell the house, right? Get them under contract. But if you're going to go out there for, let's say, to meet the carpet man, right? That's your time, right? And that could be a service that you charge, for, and you can do it in additional commission. Some people, like I have a guy in Westchester who says, look, on all of my showings, right, I bring my clients a copy of the seller's disclosure, a copy of the MLS fee, and, you know, I provide water and I provide snacks and blah, 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 blah. And that's, you know, I charge $695 as my business fee.
That's interesting. And then one other question, if you're dealing in rentals, when you do a background check, is a terrorist watch list included in the background check?
I don't know. And that is handled through Kathleen. So you would check with that. I'm pretty sure they do that as well.
Okay, thanks.
So, so anyway, then you're going to get the Alta form, right? And then you're going to be going back and forth with your client. You're going to make sure your client has the appropriate funds to settle. And then walkthrough. In the state of Pennsylvania, you're allowed to have 2 walkthroughs. So Whitney, do you want to talk about how, when you guys do your walkthroughs?
Sure, we have a little checklist that we use, and we basically go around and make sure that everything is what we expected it to be, and that there isn't any additional damage or surprises, and that everything works.
I mean, when do you do your?
Well, during Corona, things were weird, but we usually do it the day of settlement.
So do you do the 10-day before?
We have not done the 10-day before, but we've been in the house so many times before, but we haven't done it. You know, we're kind of looking it over, but we don't do anything formal 10 days before.
Okay, so you should be doing, so my suggestion is everybody does their first walkthrough 10 days before. That is when you check to make sure all the repairs are done, right? Because if the repairs aren't done and you're waiting at the settlement table and you have, you know, a wire's been sent and you have a truck in the back waiting, you know, with all their stuff in it, you don't have much stickering power and you can't do any financial exchanges at the settlement table. It is illegal for anybody to write a check at the settlement table to another party. So let's say, for instance, Drew has a client and Drew, they took all they did not put a GFCI in the kitchen. And the buyer says, yeah, just, you know, write me a check for $250. That is a federal violation, which is punishable by $1 million fine. Because everything, any type of money's changing hands needs to be on the settlement sheet. So years ago, that used to happen all the time. And then we had all of that loan fraud and mortgage fraud and everything else. So it has come out that you cannot have any money changing hands. So for instance, if you get there and they did not fix the kitchen sink, then you either postpone settlement so they can have somebody come out and fix it, or no, they or the buyer accept it as is, which is why what I tell people is all repairs need to be done 10 days prior to you get the receipts and you do the walkthrough. So when you go through there and you say, hey, the kitchen sink isn't fixed, it's 10 days. Because if not, what are you going to do when you're at the settlement table?
I have a quick question, Anne-Marie.
Sure.
So in that example with, say, the sink is something that was on the deal that was going to be repaired, and you request a 10-day ahead walkthrough, and you notice that the sink is not repaired, they technically, though, have until the final walkthrough to complete it, correct?
Yes, but here's the deal. If you're the seller, you say to them, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you need to get all your repairs done 10 days before closing.
Okay.
Right? So you're having the conversation on the other side is we need to have you in there 10 days beforehand. Right? And that's the reason it's in there, is because what happened was, so, years ago, there would be an issue and somebody would give you a check at the settlement table. Oh yeah, I'll just write you a check. So what happens now is the buyers sign a form and they say all monies that have been transacted appear on the settlement sheet. Any money that happens outside of this would constitute mortgage fraud. So you don't want to be that person. Do your inspections 10 days beforehand. Make sure you have all the receipts. So if the receipts were supposed to be from a licensed electrician and they say, oh yeah, we did it ourselves, you have 10 days to go in there and get the receipts. No, then you need to have it certified. Have, a company come out and take a look at it.
Hey, Anne-Marie.
Yeah.
That was great information. I did not know that. So does this really make a difference in terms of if you've done no inspections or these buyer is going to do any changes to the property after settlement? Do you still recommend this, or only if you're really agreeing to that?
So I don't understand what you mean.
Yeah, so if you, like my first deal and my second deal, the first deal, my buyer didn't do any inspections. It was a brand new house.
Okay.
So we need to do a 10-day walkthrough.
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What would happen if you went through on your walkthrough and there was a giant hole in the wall?
Well, I didn't know about this the federal crime. So
Or, think about it, right? What if you do, there's no kitchen counters on, right? Or the kitchen counter that was there was marble and they swapped it out and they put Formica.
right. Well, I just assumed that then you'd have to push back the settlement date.
Right, but what happens if the truck's already loaded?
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Right? And then where are you going to stay? What if you've already sold another house?
Mm-hmm.
So it's 10 days before.
Got it.
And then I do a walkthrough the day up. I am not one of these people that does a walkthrough the night before.
Yeah. Yeah, I do the day of walkthrough as well.
Right. Like there's no excuse in my book why you can't get up if you have a 9 o'clock settlement, why you can't be at the house at 8 o'clock. Do you know how many times on the second floor somebody has moved out and has not drained the washer line properly and it continues to leak? And, people go the night before, oh yeah, we just finished moving out. And they then don't do a walkthrough that day, right? And they come and guess what? There's a big hole in the floor. So I am not a fan of doing a walkthrough the night before. I do it that day. What if somebody broke in at nighttime and took out all the cabinets?
Yeah. So in your example, then obviously a 10-day walkthrough ahead of time. You do the walkthrough the day of, there's a hole in the floor, the cabinets are missing or something like that. Then your only option is to postpone settlement, right?
Well, typically, yes, unless it's a super large. So there's a couple of different things, right? Let's say there's a hole in the floor. That's a problem. We're probably having to postpone. Let's say there's 3 GFCIs that need to be fixed. What you can do is pay a contractor, right? So Drew, if it's his personal, or, let's say it's my personal buyers or sellers, the sellers can say, oh yeah, we use A to Z Electric, call them on the phone. They'll be out on Thursday and they can pre-write the check. So there are at times ways around it, but there's not always.
Right.
There's also escrows that can be set up for large items. So for instance, let's say it's February and they need a new septic system
Mm-hmm.
and we can't dig. We
Right.
will sometimes set up escrows, but escrows are 1.5 times. So if you have the seller, they say, can't they just hold it in escrow? Yeah, if you want 1.5 times the cost to be held in escrow. So if you're talking a $30,000 septic,
Needs to be 45. Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
So the 10-day beforehand, right? This way, if there's any issues, we can head them off. The 45-day or the day of settlement. That's why I also don't like to schedule 9 a.m. settlements, right? Make it for 10. I am not a person that goes out the night before. So you go to settlement. In fact, I'm with, covering for Lewis right now because he was just at a settlement. And guess what? He had the buyers, the sellers weren't moved out.
Oh no.
I said to him, I guess you're loading a truck there, aren't you, Lewis? Yeah.
And poor Lou.
Yeah.
Who is Lewis representing?
He has a buyer. Lewis sells houses.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't. Lewis does. So it's interesting.
So
Right?
why does this fall on Lewis's shoulders?
He has the buyers that are moving in. They went through the walkthrough, and the seller, the sellers didn't get it out, and so he's a young guy there. They're probably like, "Can you give us a hand just to help out?" Because Lewis wants to get the settlement tabled, and he wants it done today.
Okay. Crazy.
Yeah.
What's the backstory? Why didn't the person move out? What's up?
People, oh, I thought it'd be done quicker. We didn't have access to a truck.
Could there be could they be penalized financially for that? I'm just curious, like if let's say everybody all hands in, they're trying to help them get out, but now time's ticking away and it's pushing 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. I mean, and now you've got these buyers that can't, unpack their things. They've got their things in the truck. Is there repercussion?
Well, they're negotiated, right? So let's say instead of closing at 2 o'clock, he closes at 4 o'clock. There's not going to be any repercussions, right? Because look, the buyer wants to buy and the seller wants to sell. If let's say they're not going to get it done and Lewis can't, so here's what would eventually happen is we would do a dry settlement where Lewis would come in and close and the checks would be held until the sellers got their stuff out. So there would be things that we could do.
Oh, okay, that makes
Let's
sense.
say ultimately it cost us 3 days, then we could, do an addendum and ask for, $500 to pay for a room and board.
That makes sense.
But yeah, instead of being like, well, you cost us an hour and people, they're going to be like, well, tough. So settlement time. You sit at the chair and you do absolutely nothing. Settlement is the easiest part. You basically do nothing. So the mortgage person is going to be sitting in between the people and they're going to have them going over the forms. The title officer is going to be up and down the whole time, looking at different things, running in, cutting checks, doing wires. And basically you're there just for goodwill. It's a great opportunity to talk to people, to really cement that relationship. A lot of times people will say to me, oh, I'm really nervous. Can you come to settlement? Sure, I'm happy to. but you do nothing. You just sit there. You know, it's a good time to make nice with the people on the other side of the table, you know, make nice with the other realtor, but, you know, it lasts anywhere from probably 35 minutes to an hour. And, you know, they go back and forth. And then at the very end, the seller hands the buyer the keys. There's a lot of, you know, yippee, yippee, yippies. You take pictures and you leave. So questions on all of that. Let's talk about it. What about what happens between, so does everybody understand the buyer side ordering the title?
Well, yeah. We had to order a title last week, and there was a timeline, and we did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I called to follow up with the title company. You know, I asked if they, and it's the guys in the office. I said, "Did you send a DocuSign to the buyer?" And they said, "No, we don't really do that." I said, "Okay." And I asked them something else.
Like, what would they, like, I don't know what.
They sent something out for signature.
Oh, okay, right.
And I asked if they did it in DocuSign. They said no. And I forget what else I asked them. They said no. And then when I called to follow up, you know, and make sure everything is still moving, they're like, "Oh, that settlement's way far out." You know, like we didn't do anything, or it's okay.
Right.
You know, it's certainly.
So what
not
happens
far.
is, so they don't do the settlement. So they won't start ordering your stuff now because your settlement's in October, right?
Yeah.
So let's say they order all of the title stuff now and a lien gets put on right then and there, like at the
Right.
end. So what they do is they work backwards. So you may have your stuff in before Krista, but Krista's settlement might be sooner. So they work backwards.
Yeah, that makes sense. I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
What do I do with? I got a mortgage commitment and a signed BRI. What do I do with those? I just
So,
got them over the weekend.
okay, they go in your DocuSign envelope. So you scan them and upload them. So you got your mortgage commitment. You go over the mortgage commitment with Lewis to make sure there's nothing on there that, you know, they need to do, or there's, you know, a problem. And then the return, buyer's reply to inspections.
Yeah.
And it's signed by both parties.
Uh-huh.
Then it goes, you put that into your your folder. So you have a big online folder.
Yeah, like in Command, right, Emery?
Yeah. Yep. And you can do it. Yeah. So that's something that Lewis and Lisa can help you organize.
Okay.
Okay. So,
And Drew, also, you know, I believe the title company uses a different format in terms of like just DocuSign, that they have their own specific e-signature. So at least when I did title with a different company, that was the case. They have their own system. So, you know, they might have you sign or your buyer sign a specific form, but they'll have their own software. It's not normal DocuSign. Just a heads up.
Cool.
okay.
Will
So,
we get a copy of all that so that we have a complete folder of all of their documents?
oh yeah. Yep. You'll get everything and then you will put it in, into Command. It'll be kept in Command and it'll be kept in your DocuSign folder.
So when they send it to the people, then they'll send us a copy.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So conveyancing, what thoughts and questions do you have on conveyancing?
Hey, Marie, it's Dan.
Dan.
So I do have a closing coming up on July 9, and it's a HOA, it's a condo. I just got the HOA a couple days ago. As far as as you mentioned earlier, it's a big document from the company that runs the whole outfit there.
Who's the listing agent?
The listing agent is a girl by the name of Sherry Bramble from CB Preferred,
Yeah. So,
Wilmington.
okay. So they sent you the HOA stuff?
They sent that to me. I forwarded it over to my client.
Yeah. So if you are on the seller side, just so you know, that agent has made a mistake.
Exactly. I told them that. I said, did you send it directly to my client? And they said no.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So
no, yeah.
in any instance in the agreement of sale,
Mhm.
delivery to the buyer's agent constitutes delivery to the buyer except an HOA. So if you are the seller and you have there's an HOA and you get the documents, you must get them to the buyer. You can do it by email or you can do it by mail. And I usually would do FedEx. But the thing is, and you'll get some listing agents who will say, well, I'm not giving you my buyer's email. Well, then, yeah, you are, because if not, you're out of contract.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understood the 10 days to provide it and 5 days response back to it, all that
Yeah.
good stuff. So we're in that 5 days right now, but nothing's shown up. But I do have a question on that. They also sent in that same package the resale certificate.
You want to
there's
bring
a-
that with you.
Yeah, and that is a whole. It looks like a list of documents that my client needs to fill out.
Yeah.
Is that something that needs to happen? Do I need to do that, or does the titling company need to do
The
that?
title
or follow
company
up with
will
it?
do that. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
so
I did send it over to First Land
Perfect.
Transfer, and they said they would take care of it. So that's good. Okay, I just want to
Perfect,
confirm that. Yep.
So yeah, you want to be really careful because you want to make sure, who is, because your clients want to look through it, right? They want to make sure that they're not being sued. There's enough money in the HOA.
Yeah.
So, and if there's a capital contribution, how much that is.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Walkthroughs. Does everybody,
Hey, Anne-Marie.
Yes.
This is Santa.
Hey.
Hey, just a quick question since we're talking about the HOA stuff.
Uh-huh.
So it says the seller will promptly deliver to the buyer all the documents received from the association. So will that be done through the title company or the seller has to contact and get it?
So you as the seller's agent, so when you turn your documents into First Land Transfer, they will order the HOA.
Okay.
The First Land Transfer will reach out to you, Vasanta, and they will say, here are the documents. You must then get them to the buyer. So you can ask for you can call the buyer's agent and say, I have the HOA, or I have the documents for the HOA. Can I please get your buyer's mailing address or email address?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. Walkthroughs. Any questions on walkthroughs? Settlement. Are you ever allowed to suggest a buyer and seller exchange money?
No,
What is the fine for that?
$1 million.
Right. And it doesn't matter who tells you. I don't care if the agent on the other end says we do it all the time. I don't care if the mortgage person says, oh, we do it all the time. $1 million. Okay. Questions?
I have a question about the HOA. So I actually, Anne-Marie, my one for this Friday is a HOA as well. And the listing agent didn't send the information to my buyer's email or to their address. But we still went through, looked at the documents and then signed it. We just didn't do the 5 days. So I did have a question in terms of like in the future. So
as long as you guys signed the receipt and acceptance, that means you've accepted them. You only
Right.
have, yeah. So let's just say you decided you wanted to use this to walk,
Mhm.
right?
We could say that we didn't get the
Right.
paperwork and we could walk because of it.
Right.
Okay, so in terms of like the 10 days and the 5 days, I guess I'm a little confused about the 10 days. So 10 days after an accepted offer is when the documents need to be signed, or when you specifically ask for the documents?
So you have to request them within 10 days.
Okay.
So you have to, that's one of the reasons you have to get your paperwork into Lois, right, to first, or to for your or your title company, so that they can order the documents, right? Every day that you're not ordering the documents for your title or for your HOA, if you're the seller, you are putting your sellers at risk, because you can walk for anything. There is no reason that you cannot walk on an HOA. So in other words, let's say, Drew has buyers for a house, and Dan hasn't gotten them the HOA docs yet. And Drew's client's ultimate dream house comes up, the one that, this is it. Dan, because we haven't gotten HOA docs yet, Drew's people can walk. So you want to get the HOA docs ASAP, because you're hanging your clients out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
All right, what other questions do we have? Bye, Francis.
All right, I have a question.
Okay.
On the agreement of sale, the buyer determines where the settlement will be.
Correct.
We haven't set a date or time. I guess that happens as you're getting closer. In this situation, I live in Downingtown, Westchester. Of course, the house is down in, Oxford. So what would we do for a settlement? Is there a Keller Williams office down there we would want to settle at?
You could settle here. If you want to do an out of the office settlement, you have to let First Land Transfer know right away, and they can find you a place down there. If there's not a Keller Williams, there might be a TA title down there that you can use.
So
Yeah,
do you recommend doing it here in Exton then?
I would do it here in case you need something. You have Dave here, you have everybody here.
So think of the logistics. What a pain.
Yeah, it is. If not, go ahead and do it there. I mean, we can all do it by phone, but we can, there is no Keller Williams in Oxford. So what we could do, what is the office that the person?
It's like down in Jennersville.
Right. I mean, we can find one closer for you. So what you want to do is we want to make sure we do an out of the office settlement. So you want to let First Land Transfer know that, and they can help you find a place down there. And one of the people here will go with you.
Okay. And could you do it at the seller's
Yes.
agent's office? Yeah, that'd be fine. Okay. I mean, obviously, if you're saying you would locate an office, does that typically include a charge?
No, it's
Okay.
a goodwill.
Okay. So what would you recommend? I would just assume do it in their office if we're going to do a walkthrough that morning.
When is it? At Jennersville?
Oxford is the home location. The office is Jennersville,
So
which is
I would,
just one exit.
yeah, I would probably, and who is the, where's the
Fox.
listing agent
Fox Roach.
in that area?
Yeah, in Jennersville.
Yeah, so I would talk to our title company and say, look, because, this is where we're gonna be, I'd like to settle there. And then when you're talking to the listing agent, just say, hey, can we reserve a room in your conference room for us to do the settlement? I'd hate to make you guys all drive to Exton. And they're going to be happy, because they're going to be like, yeah, we don't want to drive up there.
Emery, I do have a question in terms of when should you schedule?
As soon as possible.
You want to schedule a settlement date and time as soon as possible?
Well, the settlement date should be on the contract.
Well, yeah, sorry. I meant more of the specific time.
As soon as possible, because they fill up quickly.
Okay. Because I didn't know if there's certain steps in terms of deadlines and certain the mortgage commitment and stuff like that. If you have to wait for that and then
Nope, I would just do it right away.
Okay.
Yep, the
Okay,
quicker
good.
you get in there, the better it's going to, if your clients have a certain preference for time, they might want to close midday.
Right. Yeah, no, because I didn't do that for my first settlement, and I was lucky enough to fit it in at a good time that worked for my buyer.
Right.
Yeah, it was stressful because I felt like I should have known this ahead of time, and I did not, and I didn't think to ask.
That's all right. That's why we had these classes.
Exactly. Thank you.
So Anne Marie, what would you recommend? How soon should I give notice on that? I mean, we're talking way down the road.
Yeah, I would call them now and say, by the way, we're going to do an out-of-office settlement, so this way they can get it in the book before they get busy.
And who is this I'm calling?
The title company.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. Okay. I hope this was valuable. I hope you guys got good information.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was
Thank you.
definitely helpful. Thank you, Anne Marie.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.